The Russian Aerospace Forces on Sunday launched an Angara-1.2 light rocket carrying military satellites from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome. According to Assosicted Press, the Russian military said in a statement that the satellites were successfully placed into their target orbits. A stable connection has been established and the onboard systems are functioning normally, the statement added.
Russia did not encircle thousands of troops in the Kursk region, despite statements by US President Donald Trump. Forbes writes about this. There are simply thousands of Ukrainian troops now completely surrounded by Russian troops and in a very bad and vulnerable position, Trump wrote in all caps on social media on Friday. Trump's statement was in response to the evacuation of about 10,000 Ukrainian troops who left positions in the Kursk region on Monday or Tuesday. Despite Trump's reports, the Ukrainian troops were not surrounded. That's a lie, said Kriegsforscher, a Ukrainian drone operator who fought in the battles near Kursk. Our team understands the situation in Kursk well, said Tatarigami, founder of the Frontelligence Insight analytical group. No one is surrounded. In the summer, strong Ukrainian forces invaded Kursk with the aim of seizing a piece of Russian land that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenski could later exchange for Russian-occupied territory. The offensive lasted for 6 months, until February the 25th, when Russia's elite Rubicon drone group launched a series of attacks on supply lines supporting Ukrainian forces in Sudza. Using advanced drone tactics, analyst Andrew Perpetua says Rubicon quickly destroyed hundreds of Ukrainian vehicles, effectively blocking supplies to Ukrainian brigades in the Kursk region. 2 weeks later, on Monday or Tuesday, the surviving Ukrainian troops left Kursk, leaving behind equipment but saving thousands of lives. The retreat was generally orderly, although sometimes chaotic, Tatarigami said. There was no threat of encirclement, and no evidence supports this. Why did Trump start talking about his entourage? Trump, by falsely claiming that thousands of Ukrainians are surrounded, is essentially echoing Putin's position on the eve of possible ceasefire talks. After a 2-week dispute sparked by a February the 28th press conference in which Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance criticized Zelensky for not being grateful enough for US aid, Kiev and Washington finally agreed to the basic terms of a potential 30-day ceasefire. Moscow must agree to these conditions or make its own demands. Trump said that negotiations with Putin were going well and that the war could soon end. But Trump appears to be basing his initial discussions on the falsehood that Russia is effectively holding thousands of Ukrainian troops hostage in the Kursk region. I have been urging President Putin to save their lives, Trump wrote. But there are no longer thousands of Ukrainian troops in the Kursk region. They left the place several days ago, despite Putin's assertion. It is wise to rely on intelligence data, advises Tatarigami, and not on Putin's words. Julian Robka, a columnist for the influential German publication Bild, also spoke out on the matter. Robka said that Trump is repeating Kremlin propaganda by telling tales about a non-existent cauldron in the Kursk region. You must be joking. This is 100% Russian propaganda. Ukrainian troops are not surrounded. That is why there is no need to spare anyone. Putin is not capable of doing anything good. There will be no more comments on this matter, the military expert wrote. With Russian artillery support wiped out and their positions exposed, Ukrainian forces moved in to fully reclaim Uspenivka. Precision strikes on key Russian firepower paved the way for a swift and decisive assault, forcing the last defenders to retreat in disarray in Pokrovsk direction. Euromaidan press media outlet reports that the goal of the Ukrainian forces in this area is to recapture the village of Uspenivka fully. From here, Ukrainians are attempting to build momentum and push further to the east, setting conditions to take Russians into a 6-kilometer wide cauldron between the Ukrainian-controlled settlements of Uspenivka and Pichchane. As Russians heavily rely on their fire support, the Ukrainian forces planned to deny and destroy the artillery and armored vehicle support of the Russian troops in Uspenivka. This would allow them to set conditions to push Russians even further and tighten the noose around the Russian effort southwest of Pokrovsk. Ukraine's key advantage is the narrow river branch between Uspenivka and Novovasilivka. With the temperatures at Pokrovsk warming up and the ice melting, this left a single bridge as the only viable crossing point between the two settlements. This allowed Ukrainians to concentrate their fire and surveillance on this checkpoint, track Russian troop movements, identify reinforcement numbers, and pinpoint their strongholds within the village. Euromaidan press says that due to intense Ukrainian drone strikes on the Russian ground lines of communication, Russians could only deploy infantry into the heavy fighting here, usually in squads of up to 2 soldiers each, which accumulated in Novovasilivka and then deployed to Uspenivka under cover of night. Due to this lack of armoured support, the Russian forces are trying to compensate by shelling the Ukrainian positions more intensely with artillery shelling. The high rate of Russian fire made their artillery pieces easier to detect and engage, allowing Ukrainian drone operators to quickly relay their exact positions to counter-battery units and kamikaze drone operators. Euromaidan press says that the Ukrainian forces continue to devastate Russian artillery positions, striking multiple pieces despite Russian efforts to conceal them. Among the key targets was a rare and powerful 240mm Tulip self-propelled mortar, one of only 40 in active Russian service. The Tulip is specifically designed to destroy heavily fortified positions, indicating that Ukrainian forces were well entrenched in the area. The Russian inability to dislodge them with conventional artillery likely forced them to deploy such a scarce and specialized weapon only for it to be detected and destroyed. Even when Russian artillery was hidden inside damaged buildings, Ukrainian drone operators successfully identified and struck them. Overall, the Ukrainian precision strikes on the Russian thermobaric artillery, Tulip heavy mortars, and standard barrel artillery diminished their fire support, exposing a window of opportunity for the Ukrainians to counterattack and regain control of their positions in Uspenivka. With Ukrainians now in a much better position, they could possibly cut off the Russian forces on the western flank of Pokrovsk through a pincer maneuver in tandem with their efforts at Pichchane and Shevchenko.